Hi everyone, it's Leah here, and I just wanted to talk to you today a little bit about my journey with ADHD. Sometimes people ask me, why have you specialised in neurodiversity and in particular ADHD? And really the short answer to that is because I am neurodiverse myself. I have ADHD, the inattentive type, and also I'm autistic, although I'm told I'm high functioning autistic. Minimal disability is the way it's described. I know there's a lot of what shall we say, a lot of debate over whether that's actually an appropriate way to describe anybody with autism, but we will stick with it for now. Some people call it Asperger's. I'm fairly open to calling it whatever it is. I don't really mind. It's just me and a part of me. It's to me, it's the difference between saying I've got, strawberry blonde hair or I'm a redhead. Doesn't really make much difference. We know roughly what we're describing. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story, and this is something I've been meaning to do all week, by the way, and in typical autism and ADHD actually way, I've procrastinated over it a little bit, and part of that is because I didn't really know what to include. One of the ways that ADHD affects me is that I find it hard to work out what's important. So I can see like every bit of information I could ever tell you about me and my life. Plus I've forgotten lots of it because my memory is terrible. And it's working out how to kind of create a cohesive thing for you that works. So hopefully this makes sense and it's helpful to you. So I was diagnosed, as I said, with ADHD, inattentive type, and autism. I'm 43 years old, and actually for 43 years of my life, I didn't know that. I was actually diagnosed earlier this year, and what led me to get diagnosed was that a close female family member of mine was diagnosed with autism, and when I learnt about the differences in the way that autism presents in females, I realised, well, actually that's probably me. And so I decided to go and see if that was something that I would be diagnosed with, and I was. But I was also diagnosed with ADHD, and I hadn't expected that. Because in my mind, ADHD was, the naughty, hyperactive, bouncing off the walls little boy who doesn't listen, gets told off all the time. And that absolutely wasn't me. In fact, I've been the opposite growing up. I've always been a people pleaser, quite compliant, quite nervous, tend to kind of sit back and keep my opinions and my ideas to myself. That's why another reason why I've procrastinated, because I find these things really, really hard to do, because it's kind of putting myself out there, isn't it, in a way that I wouldn't naturally do. So I didn't really recognise that in myself. However, once I kind of came away and started to learn about not only about the inattentive form of ADHD and what is different about that to the sort of classic, more hyperactive presentation that most of us tend to recognise, but also about how the presentation in women, in females, is different. I realised absolutely it is me. And I think as I'm talking about this, it'd be really good to do a video on the different types of ADHD, and maybe another video on what's different about being a woman with ADHD. So I will get to that. So watch this space. If you're looking on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and you will find out when it appears. So yeah, I found out about these things and realised, yeah, absolutely, this was me. So looking back over my childhood, for instance, in school, although, I'm bright, or at least I was back then, I don't feel quite so bright anymore as I'm getting older. But, back in those days, I was sharp, I did well. I found it relatively easy to pick up new information, to kind of understand connections between the different bits of information. And I tended to do quite well academically. But it was at a massive cost, because actually my ability to organise myself was really, really poor. And the way I've kind of always described it, always thought of it, I never used to speak about it at all, but always recognised that, on the top, oh, that looks wonky. On the top, I've got a sort of veneer, and it's a very thin veneer of kind of being organised, of coping, of knowing what to do. And underneath it is all the kind of chaos that I kind of hide away and pack away in the background. And of course, over the years, you learn to be better at certain things and you learn tactics. But actually, my ability to focus on particular tasks is limited. And so let's say I've got to get a certain amount of stuff ready for work. And usually I'll prioritise things like that, things that are important for me to make a good impression. My ability to, my food intake, or my, the tidiness at home, or the things that my family need me to do for them, they tend to fall by the wayside. So, it takes such a massive effort for me to channel my energy into certain things that other things fall to the wayside. And over the years, I was always that kid who didn't have their PE kit, who'd forgotten the homework, who'd spent hours doing the homework and then forgot to bring it in, who promised everybody that they'd bring something in for a group task and then would have to turn up and go, ooh, and, trying to make excuses and hide how I really was. So looking back at all of that, I realised it was true. And, having ADHD and having autism, actually, because you're so different to other people, that actually can really affect your self-esteem. It can affect your confidence. It can cause you to worry a lot. You're putting a lot of energy into doing things that other people actually can just kind of do without putting too much thought in. And so you're expending an awful lot of emotional and intellectual energy into doing the things that you're getting on with in life. And that's exhausting. And it's also not possible, not entirely. So there will always be gaps. There'll always be times when you recognise that you're not keeping up. And that can cause anxiety. It can cause stress levels to build up. I'm not going to go too much into anxiety because I've done other videos on what anxiety is and how that links in with ADHD. So please do have a look at those if you think you'll find that helpful. But I began to suffer with anxiety. And if you'd asked me at school, are you suffering with anxiety? Are you anxious? I would be so desperate to be the same as everybody else. I would have said absolutely no. And I would have backed away and I would have hidden everything I could from you so that you couldn't see past this kind of veneer, this outside that I'd created. I'm really sorry that I keep wobbling the camera. It's on my desk and it's a little bit off kilter for some reason. I need to find out why. And every time I lean my arms on it, it's knocking everything sideways. So I'm really sorry. What was I saying? There we go. This is typical ADHD. Yes, so the extra kind of thought processes and the anxiety that builds up. So I would have had anxiety. Looking back, I definitely did, but I wouldn't have admitted it. But things came to a head when I was sort of in my late teens, early 20s, and I'd been to university. And cutting a long story short, I had not coped at all. All those kind of coping strategies that I'd managed to put in place to see me through, school and home and all the things that I had to do as a younger child just didn't work in this new environment. And there's so much more to do. Suddenly, although I used to complain that my mum didn't do enough for me, sorry mum, but actually, the stuff that she did do, she didn't, she wasn't there anymore. She wasn't, made me realise how much she was doing in the background. And so, I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't managing anything at all. I was struggling to cope with all this new independent timetable. I'd lost all the structure. And this is just talking about ADHD, bearing in mind autistic as well. All the change had its impact too. And I couldn't cope anymore. I started suffering with anxiety, or again, I wouldn't have told you then. I would have been hiding it and I wouldn't have recognised it for what it was. But I was starting to suffer with anxiety, and it just became completely overwhelming, and I left university, which was Cardiff, by the way, fantastic university if you can manage it. And I headed home back to Plymouth in Devon, and decided to rent a flat on my own in the city centre. And my anxiety, of course, just got worse and worse and worse. And it all came to a head one day when, just suddenly out of the blue, I felt completely anxious. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see straight. The world felt like it was closing in. I felt like I was going to die, like my heart was going to stop or something. And unbeknownst to me, I was having my first panic attack. And those panic attacks would start to come more frequently over the coming days and weeks, and eventually it got to the point where I couldn't eat. I used to survive on bananas. I was so slim back then because of that, and I cannot eat bananas now because I just can't stand them. And I wasn't sleeping, and I went along to the doctors, and they did their best. They referred me to some counselling, which kind of helped a little bit, but didn't really much. And they gave me some medication, which again helped a little bit, but not really much. And of course, what wasn't happening was it wasn't addressing one of the major root causes of what was happening to me, which was my neurodiversity contributing to the anxiety. And cutting a long story short, over the years, I sort of found, as I had before, I guess, in my younger years, found ways of managing, ways of reducing my anxiety, but never really went away. I would always, have much more anxiety. I had, really bad bouts of insomnia over the years. But I just got on with it. And I sort of in my late 20s went to see a hypnotherapist because I'd been a smoker, as many people with ADHD are, and I wanted to stop. And this was really, really successful for me. And I'm pleased to say I've been a non-smoker for many years. But I was so impressed with it, I realised that it was something that actually I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to help people. And so I decided to change careers and signed up to do a course to become a hypnotherapist. Unbeknownst to me, the course that I chose, simply because it was near to me and it was convenient, was a course by the Clifton Practice Hypnotherapy Training School, which I didn't know then is one of the best training schools in the UK to learn to be a hypnotherapist. So I kind of landed on my feet there. And what I didn't realise was that actually learning to stop people smoking was a very small part of the course. And yes, I learned to do that, and I can and do that for people. But what really struck me was when I learnt about helping people with anxiety, depression, insomnia, and all those kinds of things that I'd suffered myself. And I just couldn't believe it when I learned about what was going on in the brain. It just struck so many chords with me, and I recognised that this was what was happening for me. And of course, remember, I didn't know that I was neurodiverse then. But if we're neurodiverse, we're still people, and we're still subject to lots of the same stresses. It's just that our brain works in a slightly different way, and actually it can contribute to that. But the basic reasons for anxiety, which I've covered in other videos, are still the same. So I'm just looking at the time and realising I've been talking for ages, and I don't want it to be too long, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. So you can imagine that as we were learning, us budding hypnotherapists would practice on each other, and we were clumsy. Sorry guys if you're watching, but we were, weren't we? We were really, really clumsy at doing it, and yet I could feel the difference that the hypnotherapy was making for me. And over the period of lots and lots of practice with my colleagues, actually I began to feel my anxiety lift. And I guess knowing and understanding the mind helped part of that too. And by the end of the course, I was a different person, still with lots of the same struggles, but just coping so much better. And the way I would describe it is I became the best version of me. So I was still me, still neurodiverse, didn't know, but I was the best version of me. And And I went out and I used those skills that I had. And over the last 8 years or so, that was back in 2011, that I first learned to become a hypnotherapist. And over the years, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people with all sorts of issues. But really what I've specialised in is anxiety. And, because I've understood it, and I think that's why I've drawn so many people to me that have wanted my help, because they recognise in the words that I was speaking that I was somebody that got it, that understood what was going on for them. And as you know, I've told you already at the beginning of the video, I was diagnosed earlier this year with anxiety. Sorry, not anxiety, brain's going, with ADHD and autism. And the more I learned about it, the more I realised that this was something that I needed to do. And of course, because a neurodiverse brain works in a different way to what we call a neurotypical brain, then there are adaptations that I've had to make, which I've done, and it really, really works well. And if you go and have a look on my Facebook page or my website, you'll see reviews from people with ADHD, people with autism, who have really successfully I'm getting tired. This is another thing that happens to me, is I get quite tired out because I'm working really hard to keep my brain on track. And then I get to the end of the video and it goes into like a big pile of spaghetti, and I start saying the wrong things. This is also my second take, because the first video stopped recording about a minute in and just didn't record, even though I spoke for about as long as I have now. See, I forgot what I was going to say. ADHD, helping with anxiety, and so I've had to adapt because we do need things to work slightly differently, but actually not massively. And, it works really, really, really well for most people with neurodiversity. And because I understand the differences that neurodiversity makes, because I understand the way to communicate things in a way that are helpful for people who are neurodiverse, the way that I need to structure things in order to make it easier for you to work with me. And also because I don't have to be the expert in your life. One of the wonderful things about the way that I work is it's not really about me being an expert. Yes, I know a lot about anxiety. Yes, I know a lot about ADHD and autism, not only from my own experience, but from learning about it. But actually, I don't need to know everything. I don't need to be able to teach you. So this is very different to the kinds of therapy where you might come along and somebody tells you how to, organize your filing system, or to, manage in the kitchen. And I might have ideas for you. I might be able to tell you things that I know that have worked for other clients, but that's not the purpose of things, or not the purpose of what we're doing. It's about getting your mind working with you, so that if you want to put into place a new system for filing, or if you want to get your eating habits under control, or if you want to focus better at work, or whether you want to seek a new job, or you want your relationship with your children to be calmer and better, and to set a better example for them, or whatever else it is that you want to do, then this is about me helping you navigate your mind in a way that helps you to do that. My voice is failing a little bit. I've had laryngitis about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and because I push my voice to its limit, it's still quite croaky. So I'm going to go so I don't damage it for the clients that I'm going to be working with tomorrow. I've got a really full day tomorrow. So I'm just going to sign off now and say to you, thank you for listening if you're still here with me. And if you want to know more, then either drop me a line, either comment below, or send me an email at leah@leahleaves.com, or visit the website leahleaves.com, and there you can find out more about me and the work that I do. Or actually, if you want to, you can book an assessment consultation. And just very quickly, an assessment consultation is really the beginning step for anybody who wants to work with me. So we'll meet together for an hour. It sounds like a long time, particularly if you've got ADHD, but I promise you we will structure it in a way that's helpful to you, and a way that keeps your interest. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups now. God, this is getting disastrous. I'll find out all about you, what your aims and goals are. We'll create a plan for working together, and I'll explain to you exactly what's going on in the mind, and why I plan to do what I plan to do for you, and what the plan would be, so that by the end of it you're able to make an informed decision as to whether this is something that's right for you. So thank you ever so much. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.